screen.
Hello, everyone. I think we're good. I don't know.
Might be.
Hello? Hello? I'm
It says
just gonna
live.
assume that...
Yeah,
I assume we're okay.
I've got the alert.
Um, anyways. Hi, I'm Trups. This is a special edition of Moist Gear Live, and we'll probably have to keep something like this for the next couple weeks. Because I am working second shift, which is afternoons into, well, midnight. But anyway, joining me as always is the lovely and moist Omegon. Say hello, Omegon.
If my nieces knock at the door, I'm going to mute.
Yes, unfortunately, due to the earliness of this stream, it's just a different time and it's kind of weird for everyone. So thank you for all for bearing with us.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
But how is Omegon this week?
You know, it's been interesting dealing with some stuff on the server, making videos. Finally got my Halloween update sorted. Ish. Christina didn't have enough time to finish the Aqua Meg suit. She didn't have time to put the scales on the bodywork, so it looks a bit more like a body suit. But she's going to work to remedy that in the future.
But it looks damn good.
It does. I think I only got, of all the comments yesterday, one complaint. Only one that said it looked out of place. And I think it's because the avatars are very cartoon style and the bodywork looks very real.
Realistic.
Yeah. The scales should alleviate that. And so she will get to that once she is able to. I haven't really done much. I'm going to see Machine Head tomorrow with Ed, one of my patrons.
Sweet.
Going to go hang out with Ed and Joe tomorrow, and then go see Machine Head and come back on Sunday. That should be all right. Ed wants to get smashed. I don't, but I'll go along and have a few drinks since he's paying. Yeah, I'm all right otherwise.
That sounds pretty damn good. At least you guys got plans for the weekend.
Yeah, well, I ordinarily wouldn't do much on the weekend if I could avoid it, but I'm okay. I'm okay with this.
I almost never do, so.
Yeah, I normally don't either. But this weekend, next weekend, I'm away. Next weekend, I'm going to Norwich, back to where I call home, essentially, to go see Dragon Force and spend the day in the city, which I'm going to really enjoy, actually. Take the brother-in-law along with me, because originally it was just going to be the two of us going, and then my friend called and said, I can join. Okay, well, the only reason I brought the brother-in-law was because you weren't going to be there. 3 tickets it is. And
there you go.
yeah, just the train part was expensive. That actually wiped me out. Oh well. I bought some trains. I've been working on videos, although I haven't today because this stream derailed me a little bit. Because if it's a bit, no, it's quite all right. If it was later, I would have had time to make a video on the main channel. But because this was earlier, I didn't have time. And now because I got overtime, after this, I go into town, do the overtime, come back, and I'll just game stream for the evening. Dragon Force is a power metal band. Thank you, Reese. I just noticed there's a 5-minute ad on this stream already, and in the tags I put Trump. That's interesting.
Well, you know, YouTube has been kind of caught lately.
Oh.
Well,
yes.
I don't know if you were watching, but I was actually watching Magog's stream on after he basically said, screw YouTube.
He's done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're brutalizing everyone, really.
I know. Yeah, it's getting to. I will admit, the only good thing about this time of year is when a video does get monetized, it does well. The problem is when it turns to January, it's scraping by time. You rely on Patreon more than you do AdSense. It shouldn't be. No one should ever be in a position, or be put, if you don't want to especially, be put in a position where you are asking the viewers for money to watch you. I don't want to do that. I'm never going to do that. I think I shilled Patreon once and I felt uncomfortable doing it, so much so that I unlisted the video because of that. Because I don't think it's right. And yet, a lot of creators that make really good content, Magog especially, are being put in a position where they cannot, even though I think Arkansas isn't too expensive to live in, based on what he
And
told
it
me.
depends, but
Yeah,
like,
where he is
yeah.
anyway. He owns a decent sized land. He had plans. I told him to be cautious originally because he was really planning ahead, and I'm like, don't. Build up the fan base, get it to a level first, then consider doing that. That's why I've never considered doing something brash or something big on my channel. I mean, minus the content constable, but that was never meant to be big. It was never meant to be what it became. And I think
But arguably, I would say that Magog puts in a lot. I don't want to say he puts in more effort,
he
but
does.
simply because of the makeup and
Yeah, no,
the
he
set
does.
and
He does.
the editing, he puts in a lot more than either of us.
Yes, he
So
does. He does, and I understand that. But because of certain choices he had to make, I told him to not bother with the education if he intended to go down the YouTube path, because while it was good to have the qualification, the fact he couldn't be consistent would harm his views, and I was right. He was never.
yeah,
You
well,
have
I
to.
definitely felt that myself.
You have to be, yes, and it's absolutely disgraceful, really. But you have to be with the algorithm. You've got to be consistent in uploading, and I think it's one of the only reasons why I still gain subs, because I'm always uploading, and it's not easy, and it's especially not easy if you are like Magog, a character, because he is so
Right.
heavily invested. He unlike me, I write notes, and obviously I use the microphone and I read from a script and can crop it all out and make it look good. He does his cuts are singular without any cuts in those like any jump cuts. There's no jump cuts in that. He has to memorize a part of a script instead because he can't see anything with the contacts in. He's far more invested in that respect because of how much it isn't just what he says, but also because obviously I use an avatar and I can use expression that way. He has to express himself, and so I feel sorry that he's not going to be able to upload as much as he used to. But actually, I don't think it's as bad as he thinks it is. If he has a like I have a job, you have a job. Okay, so key difference here is I have a job and still make money off YouTube. You're not yet monetized. We'll get there eventually. But with my position, that I always think that if you have a job away from YouTube, not only do you have something that keeps you grounded, but if you can pay your bills, anything you make off YouTube is considered a luxury and a bonus. And I think he needs to consider that instead. Because while he does have plans, he needs to build it all first, the fan base, the subscriber base, the fan base, whatever, before he can jump into such extravagant adventures. Which it
Right,
might.
I'm looking forward to it, and I even like, I donated to him a couple times just because I
Mm-hmm.
want to see that, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously it plays onto a fantasy kind of love that I have,
Your LARP
i.e.
thing,
with
yeah.
all the LARP stuff that
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, and I even tried to reach out to him because the LARP I'm a part of is it is widespread, and it's not just where I live, it's also a couple states over as well. And so it's possible that he may be able to find some of those people who would be interested in playing some characters for him or whatever. But
I
I
think
never got a message back about it.
I think I don't think right now that would be an option for him, but I know with the intention to build the village that he wanted to build, there is an option there, and I think he would certainly be willing to exploit that. But I think it kind of it depends on how he proceeds, how the channel grows post full time Magog.
Right,
We'll see.
and this is tangential, but it's it is YouTube news for everyone who's watching. Like this is something that affects both Meg and I as well. It just so happens that Magog had made a live stream about it this past week, so
I
that's why we're bringing it up.
I
Honestly,
never got a chance to see that. I don't watch much content at the moment, so I'll have to watch it and give it a listen. I do have a chance to reach. I will have a chance to reach out and have a word if I feel I can add something constructive.
that's good.
It's not going to be a simple "I told you so" thing. I don't want to do that because that's just arrogant. But I do want to. I do think if there's a chance he can. He did say on his server maybe 2 to 3 videos a month. I'll be honest, considering the production quality, that's not too bad. The only thing that'll take a hit might be patronage, but I think he'll still retain a fairly decent amount of patrons. It just won't
The
be.
thing is, a lot of people also sub him just for or subscribe to his Patreon specifically because of Sidequest.
Yes, Sidequest. That thing's still going.
Yes, and
Yes, it,
very well actually.
I'm surprised. I really enjoyed it when it was him, Beardy, uh, Weebu, I think was one of them, and someone else, I think, Stuttering Soliloquy. No, it was somebody else. Maybe it was. I remember the original run of it because I was talking to Magog about it when he first posited the idea of doing it. And I said to him, that sounds like it can't last. I was wrong. But
Well,
he's
because it's
changed.
not just internet blood sports. That's the thing. But that's kind of
Well,
what
no,
it feels like sometimes.
but it's not though, is it? Because
No, it's not, and it's actually content.
it's all character based, as opposed to Internet Bloodsport, which is herder re herder re. It's just boring.
I've never heard somebody capture
Although
it as well as you did.
although Magog has dropped the ball on one thing. Okay, so he and I did, or meant to have done, a collaboration. The deal was we were going to do a video response. We were going to get Beardy to pretend he was a bedroom feminist at the end, and we were going to do a response video. And then we were just going to start throwing abuse at each other for about 5 minutes. And then we were going to then remember that we were going to do a response video. Beardy was going to say, "I'm a feminist in a dress." And we were just going to say, "Oh, fuck off." And that was it. Because it sounded really funny to us both. We were like, yeah, this could work. This is going to work. But Magog never actually did it. And and it was so long ago, it was the previous incarnation of my main channel avatar.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm
So that's like a year now.
Nearly. I'm gonna redo it. I think I'll redo it and send it over with the Aquameg stuff instead. I think.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
Yeah, I think so. It could be fun.
But anyway, sorry for the tangent.
Yeah, 12 minutes in and we have not talked politics once.
Yes, although, I mean, God forbid we stop politics for a moment.
Yeah. YouTube politics are interesting. I do apologize for not saying hello to the chat, but hello everyone. I'm sorry I'm not going to actually say hello to everyone literally because I can't see the live chat for some reason. I've refreshed it and I can't see them.
So, both of our countries are kind of in a weird state right now, huh?
Let's start with yours. Your president's again.
Okay.
Should we start with? Do you want to talk briefly about the Warren stuff or the Trump stuff?
Let's go with Trump because honestly, I don't know shit about what Warren's proposing, and it's not the first time somebody has proposed an egregious amount of money to do something that's not gonna work.
If you'd like, I can just give you the Cliff's notes. She wants
go for it.
Her plan is $20.5 trillion to pay for Medicare for all. She wants to transfer employer spending from private care to the government, increase taxes on billionaires, and cut the military budget.
All right, so the first thing I want to say is the government doesn't handle healthcare very well in this country. The VA is a big example of this, and it's one frequently cited. The VA is almost infamous for how shitty its healthcare is. Yeah. And the argument is that this is our military spending, and it's going to the VA. Well, I mean, technically, it's specifically allotted to the Director of Veterans Affairs, but this is our, our men and women of at arms. Like, we should be treating them the best, but we don't. So, what's that to say when we're not special people? If we're just a citizen? I don't foresee any kind of government handling healthcare. After seeing how the VA has basically been trashed over and over again, I don't foresee government spending on healthcare to be useful in the slightest. But so that's part one. Part two is they want to cut the military budget, or rather, defense spending is usually what it's referred to as.
Isn't that always? And I hear this a lot. That Democrats want to cut military presence and spending, whereas the Republicans always want to bolster it. Is that true?
It's more or less true. Okay. The Democrats almost always want to slash defense spending because, on paper, it looks like we spend a shit ton of money on, tanks and bullets and missiles and shit. When in reality, a lot of defense spending ends up in people like me, actually, like in my hands. Because people who work with government contractors or work at all with the possibility that a defense contract could come your way, um, I mean, that's defense spending. Defense spending is basically, hey, Army, we're going to give you $100,000 for this, drone project. Okay, and then the Army goes, well, we're not going to personally do it. We're going to, give it to the engineers in Boeing in Washington to figure out the drone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what ends up happening is whatever that 100,000. Now, of course, that's not nearly the sum of money that would end up going, but that money ends up going into like middle class individuals, engineers, and some blue collar production guys who end up building the damn thing. Like when I see people they say, "Oh, we should cut military spending," I take that as a personal jab because I get paid through military spending.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, when you want to cut defense spending, you're basically saying I shouldn't be paid. So
Okay.
that's where I land on that one because I think it's bullshit.
Someone says turn my volume up. Okay. I'll turn it to the maximum. That is as high as it goes, I'm afraid. I could just move the microphone a bit closer. That might help. I was leaning back and not saying anything, so I do apologise if I wasn't clear enough. Okay.
Otherwise, I mean, where's she going to get $25 trillion?
20.5, yes, but it's still a lot of money. I would assume the taxing billionaires, because that totally makes sense. Okay. So do you want to talk about Trump?
Oh, do I?
He's getting impeached, man. You're losing your golden egg. Your emperor's gonna be dethroned.
Unless he gets impeached, voted out, and then voted back in 2020.
Yeah.
Which would be hilarious.
He won't be your president anymore. It's because you need to deal with him now, so you don't have to deal with him then. Yes.
Yeah, I don't understand that argument at all, actually.
So what's been going on with it?
Okay, so the House Republicans finally formalized their impeachment vote, and it pretty much, basically everyone who's been talking about it says it went down party lines. They didn't have 2/3. They had about 55 to 60%.
Shocker.
Yeah.
You mean,
but,
did you mean House Democrats formalized impeachment proceedings?
Well, yes, technically they were the ones who ended up voting yes.
Okay.
-2, actually. There were 2 Democrat defectors.
Oh. Why
I don't know. I don't know which ones they were.
Any idea why those particular defectors decided against?
Probably because they think this whole thing is BS and not worth the time.
Well, I think. Is the intention to remove Trump before the 2020 election?
I think they're trying to make it so that his election is less about policy and more about, hey, did you do something wrong?
That's
bad optics in general.
It's a bad tactic, though. To be honest, they could probably
apparently
veto policy.
Working,
oh well, if that's the case, then okay, keep it up, then, Democrats. You're doing us proud.
Unfortunately, it kind of pisses me off because for the past 4 years, all I've wanted to see is the people do something. Like, I want to see our government pass laws, get things done, improve the lives of the citizens. Like, I know these are lofty goals, and like everyone in the chat probably is like, well, that's your mistake. You're expecting them to do the thing. I know, but like, is it so wrong that I just want them to do the fucking thing that they were elected to do?
That sounds like a load of bollocks. Politicians aren't elected to serve the people. They are there to serve themselves, as you well know.
Yes, apparently. So yeah, basically the whole goal is to make the presidency look questionable, as Deb just said in the chat. Though, yes, he's technically voted to be impeached by the Democrats, but the Senate has all conviction abilities for presidents. So, the Senate, 67 of which are Republicans, then have to vote to convict him on whatever charges they bring up of high treason or whatever the fuck they're saying that he did wrong talking to Ukraine like a naughty boy.
I'm sorry, I still don't yet understand, because obviously I'm not as invested in this. I don't understand how him talking to somebody else is an impeachable offense.
Because of this quid pro quo bullshit that they were trying to pull up. I don't know why. Also, they zone in on these certain like buzzwords that they'll throw into every fucking news briefing that you'll ever hear online. But quid pro quo is basically the wording that they're using to say that, oh well, he withheld military spending for the Ukraine with the knowledge that Ukraine was going to investigate Hunter Biden for potential, conflict of interest.
Okay.
Well, apparently that was improper, and they're trying to pull him up on impeachment about it. Only because Joe Biden, by the way, is a presidential candidate.
He's fourth at the moment, I should point out.
Yeah, well, that's that's another one too.
Yeah.
It's also not like anybody's actually going to vote for him. They may be forced to, but they're not going to do it because they want to.
Okay. I should point out, and it is rightly pointed out in the chat, that it's adopting proceedings for impeachment hearings. As far as I was aware, the only thing that's happened is that Trump has received a formal invitation to be impeached.
Yeah, basically. And if I used my words incorrectly, I do apologize. Basically, they're formalizing they gonna wanna impeach.
But
impeach.
You also
in fruit.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier how many Republicans were in the Senate. 60 something, wasn't it?
67
right,
or so.
So the reason I mention that is because I don't know what the majority is.
So the Senate is 100 total.
Okay.
It's 2 from every state.
So they hold a majority there then. Okay.
Yes.
So what? So obvious question then, inbound. How does Congress get this through the Senate?
So the House would then have to basically bring up their investigation, their inquiry, and basically say, "All right, we have all the information. Here you go, Senate. We want to, bring him up on formal charges."
And what will the Senate do? Inevitably,
say, "Who the fuck asked you? Go back to your corner. Go back to goddamn Minnesota and think about what you've done."
So this is less about, excuse me, this is less about actually removing him than entirely about the optics, like you already mentioned. And
yes, that's a good point. Yeah, it's not actually because they think that they're going to remove him from office. They're literally just trying to bring up a bad look.
You earlier made a comment about why certain words feature so heavily in documentation stuff, news stuff, related things. I've forgotten what you actually said. The reason why is the reason why those appear are because they're sound bites. Everyone wants a sound bite because then they can really hone in on it and turn it into a catchphrase. They can make it mean something that it doesn't mean, or use it to mean something that they want it to mean, as opposed to what it actually means. It is all about optics, and that's what sound bites are perfect for. I find them to be quite irritating.
I hate them because they don't mean anything. Like, the meaning of quid pro quo is basically you do something for somebody else in expectation of them doing something for you. Okay, but like, isn't that just courtesy?
I think it is.
Isn't like you do good things will happen to you? Isn't that also just like a general rule of thumb?
When they used the term quid pro quo, the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, so can you prove that he expected anything in return?
The Ukraine didn't even know they were withholding anything.
So the answer is no then, because there was no...
They had no fucking idea.
So there was never any indication of something happening for it to then be reciprocated in some manner.
Now that's if you listen to the Ukraine, which
Oh, you can't believe
the
the enemy.
Democrats don't want to do.
Yeah, I heard about that, actually. That seems an awful lot like... oh, sorry about the Velcro sound. It sounds an awful lot like you're ignoring evidence to suit an agenda, which I find to be quite...
What? Politicians don't do that?
No, never.
No, of course not.
No, they're good guys.
Yep. Good guys, yeah, good guys, and demonetized. Where'd that ad go?
Yeah. I don't care for the not the optic part, but the soundbite stuff. But that stuff I remember from the West Wing. I remember watching the West Wing, and it always came up. Careful the soundbite, because we care about the soundbite. Stop caring about the soundbite and focus on the issue. And this is where it shows a considerable level of immaturity when it comes to handling Donald Trump, because instead, and this is actually very similar to the UK general election, much like how every party is now attacking Boris, saying he's untrustworthy, and they are painting that, basically it's setting up a straw man, and much like with that, they're trying to character assassinate, they're doing the same thing, but through a legal route with Trump.
Our Constitution allows this.
I noticed.
But most people will say it's a butchering of the intention. It's kind of like the spirit of the rules versus like the, what's technically written, which is usually a Republican thing, is to read literally the letter of the law, and Democrats are interpreting the spirit of it. At least that's been the case for every extension of executive power that we've ever had. It's usually a left-leaning thought process that extends that.
So when I was looking into this, the first thing that came up was the impeachment inquiry into Nixon, and how, and they mentioned, and it sort of mentioned how there was they mentioned that there might be an issue with separation of powers. In a few opinion-related articles, for example, New York Times, when it comes to Trump. I'm not sure what they're talking about.
So the thing with Nixon was that
when they compared the two, anyway.
during the issue with Nixon was that he literally had individuals investigate, or rather, commit illegal actions against an opposition, like, literally break into this Democratic location, steal some information, or get rid of it. And the problem was that they had a smoking gun basically saying that he endorsed it specifically.
They have proof of this as well.
That was the quote-unquote smoking gun tape, was that he ordered basically election interference or election method.
Watergate was very interesting, I have to admit.
Yeah, that one.
That was actually... That's almost legendary in this country because of Nick Frost interviewing him. Yeah. Was it David Frost? Nick Frost, yes.
Nick Frost.
Yeah. That interview was just a big, whoa moment. Yeah.
No, it was bad. And, he would have been impeached, likely, because at the time, people were a little bit more moderate then.
Yeah.
And so people were more willing to... see the other side and really look at the issues. And I mean,
right. David Frost. Thank you. Sorry,
David Frost.
The reason why is there's a character from a TV show who also had the name Frost, and I confused the two. Thank you. I confused the two. Oh,
Nixon did resign.
Yeah, you did resign before he got impeached. I should say, okay, so I found the passage from the opinion article. Where was it? Okay, so the resolution accomplishes several things. First, it undercuts the White House's legal defense against impeachment. President Trump's lawyers argued that the House subpoenas lacked a legitimate legislative purpose because the House had not adopted a formal impeachment resolution. That defense runs counter to more than 90 years of legal interpretation establishing Congress's authority to seek and obtain information based only on a potential legislative purpose, with no predictable end. The president's defense also carries major separation of powers implications, potentially limiting the scope of Congress's oversight authority.
But you notice that they said that Senate has that sole authority?
Mm-hmm.
That's not the House.
Yeah.
That's
Interesting.
the difference. The
Yeah.
Senate has like basically it has I guess judicial power. I guess you could say at this point, in terms of impeachment inquiries, at least they have the conviction ability. Um, the House has the investigation ability, but if you don't get both sides on your on your same team, then you're not going to get anywhere. It's basically the same stalemate because imagine right if you had this situation the other way around, and you had a Republican House just hunting down whomever was in power, Democrat president. Well, of course they wouldn't want. They would say that the House was, basically off on a witch hunt. They would say the same thing, because basically the way that the Tea Party and a lot of rhinos ended up treating Obama during his presidency is more or less the same, despite Obama having like clear and obvious things that you could criticize him on. It's the same shit. It like you're just complaining because you didn't win.
Yeah. It does appear to be kind of long-term salty at this point. I do to entertain myself on a regular basis. What I do is so I can get the best possible, most unbiased ever political news commentary ever to exist on Twitter.
Oh, of course.
I go to Sofane.
Yeah, I always commented about this. The people who end up being able to sit on Twitter and comment all day don't have anything better to do, which means they probably don't work for a living.
I think Sofane has a really good job. He genuinely does. I don't know where he finds the time to get really angry on Twitter.
Sounds like he's a supervisor.
He probably is. He's
What
the
does he
right.
do? He sits in his fucking room.
I think he has a proper office job actually. As far as I remember, I'm not going to say what the actual job is, but I'm pretty sure I know what it is. But he does actually have a decent job, and yeah, he probably is a supervisor. But I don't see the point. As far as I'm concerned, if I'm going to go on Twitter or Gab, I'm going to go on there just to post videos and a picture of something that I find interesting, and then walk away. I'm glad people in the chat finally get how I got confused. There's Nick Frost, David Frost, and Jack Frost. David Frost, the journalist, Nick Frost, the actor, and Jack Frost, the TV character from a crime show that I was confusing them all with. So yeah, sorry about that, guys. That was an easy mistake to make, to be honest. They're all quite short names.
But basically, essentially, what it all comes down to is they're bitching, and they're trying to make it a formal bitching, and basically people just have to tell them no. And whenever they do these surveys where they're like, all people surveyed seem to be agreeing with Trump's impeachment.
Yeah.
I really want everyone to take a very close look at whatever study they link you. Because without a doubt, wherever they hold these fucking surveys is almost always an inner city, a major city, or fucking California.
Lol.
It's always like Washington, Oregon, fucking California, or New York, and they're like, oh, well, we surveyed 1,000 people, and like 70% were like, oh, let's impeach Trump. I'm like, no shit, dude. Weird.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing how you got those numbers. I can't imagine how that worked out. Fucking let's go to fucking South Carolina and ask the people who work engineering jobs if they want to impeach Trump or not.
As far as from what I saw from those opinion polls, and you were right about location, it was down the middle with whether to impeach him or not. But then you look at where the polls are, and you're like, yeah, you're lucky you got 50-50. You guys were not buying.
Very elite.
1 second, you have to carry on your own.
Yeah, I mean, basically, that's the biggest thing. Like, yeah, it's a surprise you even get 50-50, which actually yields more to say that Republicans actually have a bigger foothold than you would imagine, because if even they have 50 or 40% of respondents saying no, we shouldn't do anything to Trump, I mean, that's pretty damn bad, considering you're surrounded by people like-minded.
Oh. Sorry about that. My sister very
That's
kindly
all right.
my sister was very kindly repairing
I
a
was
pair of
saying
my
it's interesting
jeans.
that you even get 40% surrounded by like-minded individuals in California.
I did vaguely hear bits, but yeah, my sister was repairing a
That's
pair of
fine.
my trousers, so she very kindly fixed that. Um, okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this?
Oh no, I think it's all folly, honestly, and I'm so like sick of them making it a big deal, and every news agency like herp derp, look at what the Trump did, and
her,
we're
her,
gonna do him, we're gonna get him this time. The walls have been closing
her,
in for 3 years, we're gonna get him this time.
We're gonna get rid of him. No, you're not. Good luck though. I do actually, and I no joke. I know people in the chat say they don't like Sophane, but I love reading his when he goes nuts on the politics stuff because he just. I did actually during one tweet on 9/11, he got really angry about the picture, and then it was because Trump wasn't there when he said he was there. And I don't care if he was there or not. I simply said to him, "Be respectful." Ignore that on this day, and he eventually just calmed down enough to say, "Yeah, no, this isn't about me being a dick. I'm gonna walk away now."
And honestly, New York's large.
I do like him. By the way, I like Fane because he's just entertaining to watch, and it's because I don't. I am invested in politics. I'm not as passionate as he is about a side. Did you know I had a troll in my PMQ stream the other night?
Oh no, I did not know.
Yeah, and they were going nuts at me. And I'm like, I don't. What am I supposed to say to this?
See, you get trolls too.
I got. The thing is, I know who they are, and they'd never trolled before, so I thought it was quite funny. It was great actually. It was a good stream, regardless of. Why is that wobbling? I'll fix that later. Oh, it's not bolted up properly. Okay, fine. Yeah. So it was interesting to be on the receiving end. I don't usually get it. It was mostly the complaint that I'm not doing as much as Sargon is, influencing and trying to affect change, and I didn't do enough because of Brexit. Denny wasn't a troll
Well,
or a joke.
yeah, but also Sargon has a face.
Yeah, I don't, and that's a big. Well, yeah, it's a huge key separator. I have never ever said I was going to campaign or actively go out of my way to try and affect change. I just wanted to be heard. If that affected change, that wasn't intentional.
And also, like, there's a big difference between a social influencer and a person who reports on news and gives their 2 cents.
Yeah,
Meg and I are kind of the latter of the two. We don't really like. We're not like out there going like, look, I've got this charity that I want you to donate so that we can get rid of the Democrats.
well,
Like, no. I'm just like, Democrats are stupid, yeah? All right, cool. Later.
well some, not all.
Right, yeah.
Did you?
But, like,
I saw Paul Joseph Watson go nuts on a video, and
that's always nice.
as did Imam Tawhidi, and what his perspective was, you're not believing in Jesus. Paul Joseph Watson's view was this is a Democrat thing. It was a video, and I actually don't like the video that much. It's a very good costume, but it's too grim. It's someone with a fake pregnant belly stabbing into it and removing the fetus.
Yo, I heard about that, and I was like, that's dark, but I've seen worse.
It was pretty dark. It's very, very funny if you can not gag. But I felt very uncomfortable with it, obviously, so it did its job, which is fantastic. But watching them say it's a Democrat issue or you need Jesus is very funny. So this is not all Democrats. This is one person who might be a Democrat, and just because someone is stabbing into their stomach, a fake stomach no less, to remove a fake baby, does not, or a fetus. I don't know if it was meant to be fully fledged or whether it was just meant to be bits. Don't know. Didn't consider asking the person in question, the dude, I think. It was just very... It was a bit... ew, at best.
You know, similarly, when it comes to weird costumes, I suppose, somebody got punched in the face for wearing a Donald Trump costume in Florida.
Really?
By a 14-year-old.
Ooh.
And I just want to point out that the way I found out about this story is by the Trump groups that I follow, or the anti-Trump groups that I follow on Facebook. And they were like, yep, that happens. And I was like, what? No! Guys, stop! No! This is not okay!
No, it's not. But
And they were like, "Is it though? Like, is it really that bad?" And I'm like, "Yes, yes, it is.
yeah,
It's Halloween.
yeah.
People dress up as Michael Myers, and no one shot him yet just to see if he lived."
There are some amazing costumes. The abortion one was quite well. I guess it's a one-trick pony. What do you do afterwards? Walk around covered in sugar syrup or some kind.
Yeah, it's kind of like you have one performance aspect, and then you're kind of screwed. It's not a
Yeah.
repeatable action.
You got to make the most of that one, and yeah, make sure everyone's paying full attention. Which luckily they did, because it kind of went viral on Twitter. I saw it. I immediately muted it because I didn't want to see it again. So people started retweeting it with or taking the video, downloading it, and putting it on their own tweet. And I'm like, you're so frustrating. But it was something. I'll give them that. Ew.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
you want to go on to UK?
Yes. Hang on. I'm going to work out how many weeks it is first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 6 weeks' time, we will have a new government. 6 weeks. We are now, by the way, minus 1 day till Brexit.
Yay! Right?
I don't think we've. I was going to get some party poppers that go backwards, but I have yet to find any. I guess you just call that a Hoover.
I was gonna say it's a vacuum.
Yeah, I think it is. We haven't left, so that's nice. And we have a general election. All parties are standing on yet to be fully released manifestos. The Liberal Democrats, the only ones that actually have published a manifesto of sorts. It's more of a list of orders, demands, because they want to hold the country hostage, essentially, to get us to go back on leaving. They want to stop Brexit entirely, in fact, which is fantastic. While acknowledging the 2016 vote. This is, by the way, taken from their actual page, and I will link it in the chat. You can hear my niece screaming, can't you?
Just a tad.
Yeah, she's fighting one of her cousins. This is the Lib Dem
Doesn't
policy.
sound like winning.
No, she's not. She's smaller. she's tiny. The intention is for them to. I do apologise, people. By the way, I can't. Yeah. Yes. So they want to stop Brexit. They say that while they acknowledge the result, the decision Britain took was simply whether to remain or leave. There was no option to choose the shape of our future relationship with the EU on vital issues including trade, travel, or security. Now, this is where an issue arises. For this, we need to agree something. And that is that not one country is bigger than the European Union. Can we all agree this for a second? Because the European it's for a point. So the European Union is something agreed upon by all member states to exist. Therefore, no one country is better or greater than it. Okay? And by that logic, no one country can then determine anything with the EU by demanding of the EU. If that makes sense. In the sense that you cannot then make a list of demands and expect them to be reciprocated or given into based on the EU's own rules that are agreed upon by a greater number of countries, many of whom will just say no or veto because they have the right to.
But Meg, I wanna.
Right.
That's it. That's essentially it. It's like, we have these demands. Okay, and?
Okay, yeah. And so someone in the chat mentioned except Germany. You're quite right. There is obviously a bias. I know, but I want to make the point because this point is quite important. Labour, Liberal Democrats, and other parties believe they can renegotiate the terms of our membership by improving reforming the European Union. Now, I don't believe they can do this. No government has ever been able to do this. The only person that ever bullied the EU was Margaret Thatcher. Since then, every successive Prime Minister has given up more of our powers and influence to the European Union, which I don't take issue with. If you want to do that, go ahead. But now we're in the present, our current year present, it is no longer acceptable to do so. Therefore, Labour's idea of a comprehensive New Deal which stays in the single market customs union to protect jobs, workers' rights, rather than just enshrining it all into our law in the first place, therefore respecting the vote and ensuring the safety of workers, is redundant. And the same applies to the Liberal Democrats, who believe they can also affect change from within. They believe their voices can be heard. No, your voices get put through a translator, and the translator isn't accurate, because there isn't one language in the European Union. Labour think they can renegotiate and also reform. Well, no, because you want to stay in the European Union. The Conservatives are torn. Some want to remain, some have joined the Liberal Democrats because of this, because they're totally liberal on one issue. It's going to be fun to watch that unfold.
Wait a second. Curious. Why isn't there a singular language in the EU?
I actually don't know.
Of course, like I can get the idea that y'all are from different countries, and those countries all have different, languages. But something that I had learned recently was that every pilot, regardless of which country you come from, must speak English.
Mm-hmm.
Because ATC across the world is done in English.
Yep.
And even more so, all of your metrics for altitude is done in feet.
Yep.
So, looks like some people might be able to do the whole language and American thing. So why not just have one singular language? Y'all have different people who speak different languages.
So I don't understand entirely why there isn't a singular language. I do know, though, that English is spoken by the majority of nation states within the EU anyway. So why they don't just adopt it officially is beyond me. I don't really care if they do speak our language or not, since we're leaving. I know that a lot of Germans learn English as a second language, so I would assume French do as well, actually, if they do extra classes. It would make a lot of sense, since it is one of the biggest and most well-spoken languages on the planet, because reasons. But it doesn't matter. It's a case that all the parties believe they can reform, except for the Conservatives, who are torn, some respecting the vote and being considered far-right because of their ideas, and some not, because they're backbenchers who many don't care about. It's quite unfortunate, though, that... hang on. Answer me on this. I heard that the agreement Boris made includes a £500 billion bailout if the euro dies. Do you know anything about that? I know nothing about that. That is a phenomenal amount of money. If he agreed that, then his deal is worse than Theresa's. So if that's true, it's horrific. It'll be very interesting going forward to see what the proposal is. As I stated earlier, the intention is to assassinate Boris Johnson's character by saying he cannot be trusted, and then using reasons that have all been debunked, like saying he almost didn't send the letter to the EU, but he did send the letter to the EU, he just didn't sign it. Not obeying the rule of law, but he has obeyed the rule of law every single time. So it's quite interesting to see how they proceed. Labour are trying very hard already, for optics' sake, to show that Corbyn is a man of the people. Okay. He's a man of...
Whose people?
He's Islington North bunch, mostly. And obviously the poor people who then see him and think, he'll look after us because he looks like my granddad. Forgetting he is worth £3 million and lives in a £1 million house in London. Which doesn't mean much because it's a mid-terrace pile of plop. But he lives in it nonetheless, and I think it's quite interesting that the way they're all going to go forward, the debates will be the biggest tell on this. The debates will tell us whether they're going to attack him, Boris that is, because of him, or whether they're going to attack the Conservatives' history, because people don't remember this. Boris Johnson, for the majority of the Conservatives' time in power, was Mayor of London. He was not in Parliament for, I think, 6 years, maybe 7. He really wasn't. He was nowhere near, okay? And the fact that then people say he did this, 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 they forget that what he did as mayor of London was where he actually did things. He didn't do anything in those 6 years prior, did he? So he didn't. Nobody can actually use that against him, but they'll try regardless. So it comes down to how good people's memory is. Nigel Farage, yesterday I believe, he interviewed a man from Washington called Donald. Don't know if you know who this guy is. First-time caller. And he discussed with Mr. Farage his potential run, because he's also announced today formally in a video, which I was going to play but I don't have time for. He announced his intentions going forward. Now, originally, Farage said if Boris let him contest 90 seats, he would leave Boris alone and work with him. But Boris rejected it. There are two sides to this problem now. If Nigel Farage does have the backing and the resources to contest 600 seats, he could win a fair share of them. He really could, especially in Labour constituencies that voted Leave that have not honoured it, and of course Conservative seats that voted Leave that did not honour the agreement of leaving on the 31st. Let's go with that. The problem here arises if he doesn't work with Boris, or Boris doesn't work with him, they won't be in charge, because it opens up a potential for a minority government with Corbyn at its head. But if he works together with them, it's a possibility they could win a massive majority, but it does depend on what domestic policies the Brexit party bring together or bring to the table, because they've yet to fully announce a manifesto on that. They have indicated, and they had in the video, which I will link down below, link in the chat for everyone else, they did talk about the what was it? They talked about some of the policies they were going to implement, and that seemed promising. But it's going to be quite interesting to see whether because Farage last time at election 2015, he won 4 million votes, but didn't get any seats, or was it one seat? Got barely any. This time, though, he's coming in off the back of, essentially, you guys have not delivered. You said you would, you failed. Now it's my time to actually attack you. And so today he announced his intention, and he has called, Farage has outright said to Johnson, let's build a Leave alliance. Warning that if Boris Johnson turns down the deal, the party would field candidates in every single seat in England, Scotland and Wales. Now, Tory sources believe that this is where Corbyn could get into Downing Street via the back door and would only lead to gridlocking Parliament further. They're only saying that because they want it to remain a two-party system. Because if Nigel wins any reasonable number of seats, let's say he wins 30 seats, that's a lot of seats to lose for either the Conservatives or Labour. Now, current polls show a double-digit lead from the Conservatives over Labour. Labour could well lose at the next general election regardless. However, it does depend on what the Brexit party intend to do. Because if they make enough noise, if they make enough of an impression, because let's face it, Farage can do that. If he does that, he could take seats from both of them. Jo Swinson says that she's the largest Remain party. She is, with 18 MPs. That's not much, really. And she's wasting her chance, because she's now going to go for Conservative stronghold seats that they've never lost, ever, in London. Which is silly. Chuka Umunna is going to lose his seat. He's from Strathern. Okay, I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Wherever it is he's from, he's going to contest a seat in London instead. He's going to lose the seat. And he's a Labour guy. New Labour, essentially. There's another one called Angela Smith. She's contesting a seat, Windsor, I think, that's been held by the Conservatives since its inception as a constituency. They're not going to win it. Just because the constituency voted Remain doesn't mean they're going to vote for her, a Liberal Democrat no less. I talked about other politicians, like today this morning. Antoinette Sandbach, she was a Conservative. Based on the name, it's pretty obvious. She's now a Liberal Democrat. But the thing is, based on her policies and her history, she is very much conservative, but she's a conservative on everything but Brexit, where she is an absolute traitor to a constituency that voted leave. They voted leave, and she wants to remain. And then she inserts her wanting to do what's best for her constituency argument here, which isn't a valid argument. They voted leave. So you leave. You then have to do the best with what you have and not say, I know you said you want to go, but it's a lot of hard work. People like that.
Okay, so I have a question.
Go on.
With Nigel Farage and Boris basically butting heads as basically two conservatives going at it, which opens the door for splitting the vote. Is it more important that the seats are held by people who follow an individual or believe in the purpose? So, like, if a Tory wins a seat but is Brexit, how does it necessarily play into the fact whether or not Boris or Nigel is in the lead?
I just had a massive brain collapse. Can you please repeat that?
That's okay. I probably didn't say it very well. If Boris is Prime Minister and the Brexit Party win all the seats, what does it matter?
I think
if the point is still the same.
So if it's still the issue of Brexit, then yes, it's not a problem, because then they can simply rely on the Brexit Party for votes. However, the Brexit Party do not agree with Boris Johnson's deal at all, because for the most part, they agree with a more harder Brexit than the one proposed by Boris. His deal is a bit softer than what Nigel would want. Nigel, in fact, said he would prefer the extension to Boris's deal. But I don't think there was any version of any deal he'd be okay with that wasn't a harder Brexit anyway. Because I think in his mind, it's not so much about doing a deal with the EU, it's a simple case of he wants to flip them off as he leaves. I can imagine him contesting a seat as well, by the way. I don't know if he'd have to then immediately resign from the EU spot. I'm not entirely sure. I do think if the Brexit Party wins substantial numbers, which is possible, if they won enough seats, they could be the third largest party. Say they do that, then it won't be Blackford we hear questions from in the future as a third party. It'll be Farage or someone else leading them.
The paper fondler?
Yeah, we won't see the paper fiddler, the paper pervert. But I'm okay with that. Maybe not, who knows. It's all up in the air, really. Until this unfolds a little more, I don't know what's going to happen. There's no indication yet. It's too early. We've got 6 weeks. By, say, week 3 or 4, I think we'd have more of an indication where the Brexit Party sit in all of this. And I do think it's arrogant of the Conservatives to not consider them as a viable support, since they've relied on the DUP for 10 votes just to prop up Theresa May's government. And they don't really agree with the DUP on everything. On a lot of things, in fact. So I think if they're going to now say they won't work with the Brexit Party, it's arrogant, because chances are they'll have to. The Liberal Democrats won't work with the Labour Party, by the way, as long as Corbyn is in charge, because Swinson doesn't like him. I don't suppose it's because he knows, like everyone else, that she wanted to leave the European Union 10 years ago. That video was a nice bite in the backside on her part. Expect letterbox vote tampering. Well, everyone should go register.
Yeah, well, see, the reason why I asked is because, well, 2 reasons. I look at it from the position of somebody who doesn't know a whole lot about specifically your politics, because you're much more well educated in the field than I am. And so I basically am playing the part mentally of the standard UK citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't know a whole lot, but this is what I hear, right? You know, hearing the examples that you just gave in the stories, basically, I'm just like, well, I don't give a fuck if it's Nigel Farage or Boris. I just want to leave the goddamn EU. Yep. I just want somebody to fucking take me out of here. So if it's like... So I believe you guys have like this like tiered system where you vote like 1, 2, 3 for who you want.
We vote for the MP in the constituency.
Yeah, and
Um,
so I'm basically thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, so if like I have Boris's follower and Farage's follower, yeah, they're probably going to be one and two with the Lib Dems and Labor at the bottom.
yeah.
So they're not going to get my vote, even if somebody were to split the vote.
Hmm.
I think that's how that works, right?
I think so. I'm a bit. I think people in the chat are quite right to not trust Farage, but we haven't seen him as a UK politician ever. He's only ever been a politician in the EU, and their politics are vastly different.
So the thing about Farage that I noticed during the whole UKIP thing
Mm-hmm.
was that Farage was like this. Yeah, actually, I kind of want to lean on Saki's description of him being a con artist. I would call him a snake oil salesman. I'll sell you, Brexit, just vote us into power. And it almost seems like one of these power grab situations that you would
Right.
find a otherwise dangerous
Yeah.
person would end up having the charisma to lead a country.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to liken it to necessarily Germany or the Soviet Union because it happens everywhere.
Yeah.
But basically, I am eerily skeptical usually of the extremely charismatic types.
Yeah. So I just want to quickly jump on something. You said snake oil salesman. Is this a turn of phrase or a con artist?
Oh yeah, so a snake oil salesman is a person who basically says, I've got Johnson's magical elixir. It'll take away all your ailments. Here you
Ah.
go. Just buy it from me for $5. Here you go.
See,
And it's just snake oil.
right. So I only asked that because snake oil is also named a brand of guitar pedal, and I was
Oh,
I was very confused for a second.
yeah, no. It's more related to early U.S. History where
That does sound.
somebody would travel being like a traveling doctor or traveling
Oh yeah, we've
salesman,
had
and they
those
would
here.
basically sell
It's like
bullshit.
it's like the Sweeney Todd thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, he did sell exactly what he said.
No, but it was the ad in the movie. The advertiser was trying to sell an elixir thing, but it's the con artist nature of it.
Oh, yeah, Pirelli, yeah.
But yes, okay.
Yeah, that's basically
Um,
it.
as far as Brexit goes and the UK general election, Brexit will be the focal point. I'd rather it was domestic issues because I think there are a fair few that need to be addressed. But Labour are going to attempt to stretch themselves a bit thin here by claiming to address all of that, but they're not going to. I think it's a failing on their part, but Brexit is going to be the key talking point, whether anyone likes it or not. I don't want it to be medicine shows. Thank you. Thank you, Roger. I couldn't remember the name.
Yeah.
It's going to be tedious, but I'm looking forward to the debates when they are finally announced. They have to happen. They've got to, and I want to cover them desperately. We have 40 MPs, 50, leaving Parliament, which is actually a low. It's not that many usually for general elections. So those seats will be interesting because many are stronghold points, but there are a number of them that are swing seats. Yeah.
I want to say this out to the chat, by the way.
Okay.
If you are from the U.S. or you are from the U.K. or anywhere else in Europe, I want you to take very close looks at both the UK politics right now and the US politics right now, because we have very similar problems that are basically mirroring each other on both ends, where you have a power grab attempt by individuals in your government to take control of basically top dog seat. We have the same problem here in the U.S. and it's on full display in the U.S. because we have these 10 Democratic candidates, some of which have already basically been shunted out. They're not going to get appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
But you have what honestly feels like Obama's second term happening in the UK right now. So around that time, and a little earlier, we had the emergence of the Tea Party movement. The Tea Party movement in the U.S. was basically these ultra conservatives, which ended up just being the same brand of neocon with a new name on it. And basically, they ended up trying to push hardline conservatives versus moderate conservatives. And they ended up splitting the vote on, unfortunately, a shitty candidate anyway, because then you had Mitt Romney Obama, and then you had McCain Obama, or vice versa. And honestly, neither of them would have worked, but at least McCain apparently became a darling of the left once Trump got elected, which was weird. Um, but it's something that is painfully like obvious just because of how I'm listening to Meg explain this whole thing. Everyone should, if you don't already, watch both countries' politics. It's going to give you much more understanding as to what is happening behind closed doors in your own government, because we're really not all that different.
It's quite sad, isn't it, at the moment, then? The similarities?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, big time. I hate the fact that every time I hear something from you guys, I'm like, hey, we have the same problem.
Yeah. It would make these streams stale, but thankfully you've got impeachment.
Yeah, but so do you, just not officially.
Not yet. Give it time.
You have a general election.
We'll get there. Okay.
But you guys remember, you guys voted for a no confidence in your government. We don't have that.
We do have a vastly different system in that regard, yes. And while party lines do exist, at least when times must and they're fed up enough, people will jump on the other side, which is the only reason we got the election, by the way. About 100 Labour MPs were like, fuck you, Corbyn, we're having one.
Well, thank God, honestly, because at this point, there are senators who are up for re-election in a couple days.
Yeah.
Like just your standard election that happens every year, November 4th. Well, people need to vote for their shit.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're going to get to the point soon. Luckily, with all the news that's covering politics, it has inspired a whole new generation of people who basically want to say fuck you to the government, which is great. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got these situations that just everyone needs to make sure that they pay attention and do what I don't imagine that anybody in the chat honestly isn't going to vote, but god damn it. The fact that I have to push this so hard because the world appears to be crumbling is sad in and of itself.
Yeah, it all is. Sadly, while we could talk about this for a while longer, both of us have to go to work.
Yeah, we do.
I've got to go do overtime, and Trups has to go masturbate into a cup.
Second shift, that's what they call it.
That's what that job is. I knew it was the name for it.
Fuck me, man.
Trups did release a new video this week, for those that are all interested. His channel link is down below. It is a good video, so go and check it out. I didn't release a video today, other than on this channel, because I'm boring. Yeah.
My video should come out more often. I just didn't want to talk about impeachment, and that was all the news that I heard this week. I was like, I don't care.
Yeah. Okay, so is there anything you'd like to say before we finish?
Free Hong Kong.
Yeah, free Hong Kong, everyone. Say goodnight, Trups.
Good night, Trups.
Good night, Trups.